The Akashic Records are always in balance, always alive where balance is, and respond to you with an awareness of your balance. Healing is balanced. Life was written before you were born, and it's still being written right now, not by fate or chance, but by a streak of consciousness so vast it contains everything your soul has felt, done, or dreamed. There is a place that holds every thought, every intention, every karmic imprint of every being that has ever lived. A field so silent most never hear it, so subtle most never sense it, and yet it is always there just behind the veil of ordinary awareness. You felt it before in the still of meditation, in the strange clarity of deja vu, in dreams that feel more real than waking life. The ancients called it Akasha. Mystics knew it by intuition. Today we call them the Akashic Records. But make no mistake, this isn't some new age fantasy. This is a blueprint behind your reality, and once you see it, you'll never see yourself the same way again. There's a reason you sometimes feel like your life is part of a story. You don't fully understand, like you've been dropped into a chapter mid-book with no memory of the pages that came before. That feeling isn't imagination, it's intuition. Deep down, something you know, deep down in your soul, has lived far more than this single life. It knows there's a record of those lives and that they didn't vanish when you were born into this one. The Akashic Records are not a book, they are not physical, they are not locked up away in some ancient building or buried beneath the earth. They exist in a dimension beyond time, beyond space, a non physical field of consciousness that acts like a spiritual database. Imagine a vibrational archive that stores not only your actions, but your thoughts, your emotions, your intentions, every decision you've ever made, every lesson you've been meant to learn, every lifetime you've lived. And not just you, everyone, every soul, every experience. This is not a concept for the chosen few. This is a terrain of consciousness itself. The term Akashic comes from the Sanskrit word Akasha, meaning either or spirit. It is the fifth element in an ancient Indian cosmology beyond earth, water, fire, and air, representing the subtle energetic substance from which all things emerge. To the ancient Akasha, it wasn't just a poetic idea. It was the invisible thread connecting all of existence to the field through which divine intelligence expresses itself. And the records are what that field remembers. This isn't some niche corner of metaphysics. Versions of this idea exist in almost every mystical tradition. The Hebrews spoke of the book of life. The ancients believed in a whole of records. In Islam, there's the Allah Mahfazes, the preserved tablet that records all things. In modern Western thinkers like Helena Blavatsky and Rudolf Steiner spoke extensively of a spiritual memory field, the transcendence, the limits of our senses. They weren't inventing it. They were remembering it. If you've ever wondered why some people seem born with a kind of wisdom, or why you have had unexplained fears, uncanny abilities, or deep emotional reactions that feel far older than this life, you're not crazy. You're sensing echoes from the records. You are more than your current circumstances. You are a soul carrying layers of experience, and those layers are not random. They're patterns, part of a larger curriculum that your soul agreed to explore. But until you become aware of those patterns, they keep playing out unconsciously, lifetime after lifetime. And this is where the records become more than concept. They become the key, a map, a compass pointing back to yourself, because within them there are the answers. Not just about yourself, but about everything that has ever existed. It's not just about who you were, but about who you are becoming. They are the insights waiting to be heard, lessons waiting to be integrated, and the truth. Most people never even get close to that. Your purpose is not something that you invent, it's something you remember. The records aren't off limits, they're just off radar. Most people never even try to access them, not because they're not capable, but because they were never told it was possible. They were taught that knowledge lives in books and that authority lives in institutions, that answers must come from outside, but the records say otherwise. They say the highest knowledge isn't learned, it is recalled. You don't need to be a guru or a psychic to touch this wisdom. You just need to get quiet enough to hear what's already being echoing through you, inside your energy, inside your brain, inside your soul. Long before the term Akashic Records was ever coined, there were those who knew not in theory but through direct experience, visionaries, mystics, seers, and sages who touched something beyond the veil and brought back messages written within the light. They didn't call it a record because what they encountered wasn't language, it was truth. In its pure, most vibrational state, formed across continents and cultures, they whispered about a place, if you could even call it that, where the memories of the soul were kept guarded not by walls, but by frequency. Those who reached it didn't reach it with their eyes, they felt it in their bones. The Vedic of ancient India looked at the records as the primal substance of all reality, the origin of all form and all thought in their worldview. Nothing was ever truly lost. It simply returned to Akasha like the ripple of folding back into the ocean. Tibetan mystics referred to the same field as the mainstream, a flow of consciousness that transcends individual lifetimes. The Druids, the Egyptians, the Gnostics all had their own names for it. Different languages, different symbols, but the same knowing that there exists an invisible domain which remembers everything. So, what happened to this knowledge? It didn't disappear, it was dismantled, marginalized, rebranded as a superstition by institutions that feared its implications. Because if the soul has memory, then the self is not defined by nationality, religion, or even biology. If the records are real, then authority must be internal, not imposed, and that is a dangerous idea to systems built in control. During colonization, many indigenous cultures had oral traditions of the soul. Memories were forcibly silenced, scared for their sacred ceremonies, ones that opened the intuitive channels to the Akasha. They were outlawed, marked, or replaced. The burning of ancient libraries, the demonization of pagan practices, the rewriting of spiritual history, it was all part of the same effort to sever the connection between human beings and the knowledge that lives beyond the five senses. Even today, in the age of rationalism, the idea of Akashic records is often dismissed as science fiction or fantasy, yet those same critics cannot explain why children remember past lives or why people you have never met before could share your same dream, or why ancient texts across civilizations describe identical experiences of soul memory with uncanny precision. It's not the evidence doesn't exist, it's that it doesn't fit the narrative. Society has been built on consumption and obedience. It cannot function if its people start asking, who was I before this? Akashic records are not about remembrance, they're about reclaiming a truth that was taken, not by violence alone, but by ridicule and distraction. What's new is that more people are waking up to them again, and maybe that's why you're here. Not to learn something brand new, but to remember something timeless, something your ancestors once knew before it was torn from their tongues, something your soul has been trying to show you all along. Because when you realize that history isn't just written in books, but in energy and frequency, you begin to reclaim the story no one else can write for you. You don't need a library card to access the Akashic Records. You don't need permission from an institution, a degree, or a spiritual hierarchy. The records were never built to be owned or guarded. They were meant to be felt, remembered, and lived. This is what makes them different from every other source of knowledge. They respond not to intellect, but to frequency. You don't read them with your eyes, you align with them. You tune into them like a radio. It can happen spontaneously during grief, intense joy, or moments of complete stillness. But to access the point is always the same presence. You cannot bulldoze your way into the records. You soften into them. You surrender into awareness. So still, so honest that your energy matches the frequency of truth itself. Sometimes people describe seeing records as a massive library or an ancient temple filled with scrolls and light. Others experience gears or images or mathematic equations. It has kulas, sounds, or symbols, but don't translate into words, but make total sense emotionally. Some people access the records through automatic writing, allowing the subconscious to translate what the conscious mind can't. Some use breath work. This stimulates the pineal gland. Others work with plant medicine, lucid dreaming, and astral projection. These are all great gateways for those prepared to explore the deeper terrain of consciousness. But no single method is universal. The technique is less important than the intention. Intention is everything if you go into the records. Looking for proof, control, or entertainment, you're likely to find nothing at all. But if you approach with reverence, curiosity, and the willingness to be changed, they open like a magical gift. The records don't flatter your ego. They show you patterns, truth, loops you've repeated across lifetimes, wounds you've carried longer than your own name. They also show you your power, untapped, ancient power waiting to be remembered. They offer clarity in places where you've been confused for years. They whisper the same message over and over again. You are more than you've been told. What's wild is that many people have already accessed the records without even realizing it. That intuitive knowing that saved you from a bad decision, that strange moment when you knew that someone would say something before it was said, that unexplainable pull towards a place, a person, or a path, these aren't coincidences. They're echoes, glimpses through the veil, your soul trying to speak through the noise of a world that would and is designed to keep you distracted. The Akashic Records aren't about escaping this world. It's about embodying your full self in this world. It's not about a way to bypass reality. It's a way to see clearly. When you access the records, you don't just remember who you were, you remember who you came here to be. And that kind of memory isn't passive. It moves you. It changes how you walk through life. It reshapes how you respond to challenges, how you see others, and how you tell your own story. Once you stood inside the infinite and could see your place in it, nothing can convince you that you're small, broken, or powerless ever again. You didn't come here empty. You didn't arrive on this planet as a blank slate randomly thrown into a chaotic world. You came with a blueprint, a soul level designed and shaped by lifetimes of experience, intention, and consequence. Akashic Records hold that blueprint. They don't just contain information about who you've been, they map out the energetic residue of those experiences. Karma isn't cosmic retribution for doing something wrong, it's memory, it's momentum, it's energy, echoing forward, seeking resolution, balance, and growth. Think of it as an unfinished chord that needs to be completed. If you betrayed someone in one life, you may feel a deep need to protect others in this one. If you silenced your truth for years, you may now feel compelled to speak, even if your voice shakes. These aren't random traits, they're threads, emotional and energetic patterns woven through lifetimes, creating continuity in your soul story. Then there are soul contracts. These are not rigid scripts, but agreements made at the soul level before incarnation. Arrangements to meet certain people, face particular challenges, or experience specific lessons. That toxic relationship, that impossible parent, that mentor who just appeared at the right time, these aren't always accidents. They may be part of a deeper contract and mutual agreement to catalyze growth in each other. No matter how difficult the process, the Akashic Records allow us to glimpse these contracts, not so we can escape the pain, but so we can understand its purpose. This is why the records are not just repositories of information, they are mirrors of transformation. When you access your soul's blueprint, you begin to see your struggles differently. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what is this teaching me? You begin to notice the repeating cycle showing up in different disguises, the same kind of heartbreak, the same fear, the same sabotage. And when you see the pattern, you gain the power to rewrite it because awareness breaks the cycle. A choice made with full consciousness becomes the seed of transformation. There's also something sacred about seeing your gifts through the lens of the records. We often focus on wounds when we talk about past lives, but wisdom travels too. Talents travel, strength, even spiritual abilities, healing, teaching, and creating. It might not be new, it might be something your soul has been mastering for a lifetime. The records help you remember not only where the pain started, but where the power lives. Understanding your soul blueprint also dissolves comparison. Once you realize everyone is on a unique evolutionary path, the need to match someone else's timeline disappears. You begin to honor your own process. You stop rushing, you stop blaming, you start trusting, and your challenges are not obstacles, they are activations. The Akashic Records reveal the soul's curriculum, and once you see that, even your biggest setbacks begin to feel like sacred assignments. The most liberating truth of all, your blueprint is fluid. The past may shape the present, but it does not control it. Contracts are not a life sentence, but can be rewritten. Patterns can be broken. This is not about determinism, it is about awareness. The records don't change you to a fate, they offer you a map, but you still choose the path. You still carry the pin. In every moment, you're either repeating an old pattern or initiating a new cycle entirely. So when you ask, what is my purpose? You are not waiting for the answer to descend from the sky. You're being invited to remember your soul already knows it. The blueprint has always been inside you. The Akashic Records are a challenge to everything we thought we knew about reality. There's a reason mainstream science has largely ignored the Akashic Records. They don't fit neatly within the materialistic worldview. You can't put the records under a microscope. You can't measure them with a ruler, quantify them in a lab. But consciousness itself, your thoughts, dreams, memories, can't be measured either. And yet you know they exist. The records might not be physical, but neither is the internet signal that lets you see this now. Irving Laszlo, systems philosopher and two-time Nobel Peace Prize nominee, introduced the concept of the Akashic field as a universal information field that underlines all creation. According to his theory, the universe is not a random accident, but a coherent system driven by information stored in the Akashic field. He didn't pull this from an ancient text. He found parallels between cutting edge physics and a timeless wisdom of spiritual traditions. To him, the Akashic Records were a fantasy, they were a science inevitability, waiting to be understood. The records change the lie that we have been told, that we are isolated, separate beings in a dead, mechanical universe. Instead, they point to something far more intimate, a cosmos woven within intelligence, memory, and interconnection. It's a field that remembers a universe that knows itself. You will discover the greatest truth ever hidden. We just stopped looking in the right place. From the moment you were born, what the world began telling you who you are, not with curiosity, but with certainty. It gave you a name, a nationality, a religion, a school system, a set of beliefs, and a long list of rules. It taught you what was real, what was imaginary, and what was dangerous. In that long list of silent agreements, it slipped in one message louder than the rest: forget. Forget who you are, forget what you've lived, forget where you came from, forget what you know. It wasn't accidental. This was some unfortunate side effect of growing up in the modern world. It was part of a larger system, a system built to sever your connection to anything that would make you powerful, anything that would make you sovereign, anything that would remind you that your soul has a memory far deeper than your current name, job title, or government issued identity. Because someone who remembers who they are cannot be controlled, and control is the currency of the world we live in. You were given obedience instead of intuition, repetition instead of soul work. Schoolwork, you were taught to look outward for answers and to mistrust anything that came from within. If you had visions, you were called imaginative, or a witch, and burned at the stake. If you had past life memories, you were told it was fantasy. You felt it deeply connected to things that you couldn't explain. You were asked to forget them. You were being sold a version of reality so flat, so mechanical, that anything sacred was reduced to superstition or entertainment. This is why the Akashic Records feel so distant to so many. You just didn't know what to call those moments of profound clarity that seemed to come from nowhere. The sense that you've known someone forever, though you only just met them. The gut feeling that saved you, the flashes of insights in your dreams. The deja vu that makes no sense. But memories don't die, they wait. The soul still remembers, and no matter how much culture tries to silence it, it finds a way to speak through art, through synchronicity, through breakdowns that force you to rebuild, through grief that cracks you open enough to finally feel something real. The forgetting was strong, but the remembering is stronger. And here's the part that stings. The world never wanted you to know this, because somebody who remembers is dangerous. They don't obey easily. They don't chase empty success. They don't play the roles they didn't choose. They see through the illusion, and worse, they help others see through it too. That's why mystics were burned. That's why shamans were silenced. That's why the wisdom keepers of indigenous cultures were erased. It was never about disbelief. It was about suppression. Amazing news, though. That system is breaking. Cracks are forming in the foundation. More and more people are waking up from amnesia and asking questions that can't be answered by textbooks or news anchors. They're sensing something deeper that once process begins, it can't be reversed. Once you begin to remember, you realize how much you've forgotten, and with every piece that comes back, so does your power. You weren't meant to stay blind, you were meant to wake. The Akashic Records were never hidden, you were just taught not to look. Remembering is not going back, it's about going within. The Akashic Records are not something out there in a distant dimension, guarded by mystics and flowing robes. They are right here, folded into your being and encoded in the stillness between your thoughts. Accessing them doesn't require ritual so much as it requires readiness. It's not about performance, it's about presence. You don't need special words, just honest questions. You don't need spiritual credentials, just the courage to sit with yourself and listen beyond the noise.